Welcome to everybody who find the time to join this interesting session. So let me start by setting the stage of today's session. As we know, the world of decarbonization, sustainability, workplace improvement, net zero planning, and digitalization is super complex and no doubt challenging and confusing for many of us and our clients. We must therefore look at the practical and scalable solutions that can help clients to deliver on these challenges, whilst at the same time ensuring operational efficiency and profitability. We at Signify, we believe that lighting and smart controls can and will play an important role in enabling and delivering on topics such as decarbonization, sustainability, net zero, and digitalization. And we also truly believe that the best way to deliver this at scale is via partnerships. So on that note, please let me introduce you to our partners and colleagues on today's webinar. So let me start by introducing Rupert Snuggs, the Managing Director at Pineapple Core. We have Kevin Jordan, Manager HSEQ and Business Process Improvement at Edwards Vacuum, part of Atlas Copco. And I have my colleague Clark Morrow, Channel and Segment Manager in the UK and Ireland at Signify. So I now will briefly hand over to Clark, who will do a very short introduction of our company, but also will take over starting the discussion. So Clark, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jaap. And first of all, thanks to Kevin and Rupert and yourself for joining the webinar today. Really appreciated. So just a few words on Signify. Some of you may not actually know who Signify are, so we'll start there. So Signify were formerly known as Philips Lighting. Around 7 years ago, we split from Royal Philips and we started a new company called Signify, 100% focused on lighting. And as a result of that, we remained the biggest lighting company in the world. We've got around 6 billion euros in revenue, around 30,000 people spread all around the world. And we continue to service the entire value chain within the lighting industry. So everything from individual light sources, so that the lamps, the light bulbs, through to the luminaires, the light fixtures themselves, and then through to the more complex systems and services. And that kind of complete spread of solutions is applied, whether that's for retail, for hospitality, for industry, for warehousing, even for road and street and sports and stadia. So we're able to service that entire market with these solutions. Just a few sort of key facts and figures that sort of underpin what we're doing as a company. We continue to invest a huge amount into research and development, around 5% of our sales. 90% of our sales last year, at the end of last year, were in the area of LED lighting rather than conventional lighting. And I think that demonstrates the huge transition the industry's been through over the past years. We have a huge amount of patents, as you would expect. Philips have really got a real stronghold in developing and bringing out new innovations. More on the diversity and inclusion, we've got a big drive towards the amount of women we see in leadership positions, and we're proud to have a good high percentage there. And then coming back to more of the product side, we've got nearly 150 million connected light points, and that means that those connected light points have got a level of intelligence. They're not just dumb lighting, they're connected in some way and can create more value, and I'll come back to that point a bit later. And in terms of circular revenues, what we really mean there is products and services that have been designed and implemented with a real circularity in mind. So that's a constant drive for the business to up that percentage. And Brighter Lives is one of our core pillars within the company, and we're pleased to see that every year that contribution towards those Brighter Lives revenues is growing. And we've got a huge play in terms of our sustainability targets and our overall sustainability strategy with year-on-year reductions in our greenhouse gas emissions. And kind of all of that sits within our, I guess, purpose as a company. And we have this kind of statement around, you know, brighter lives and better world. And that kind of underpins everything we do, the strategy, the go-to-market, the way that we act, the way that we serve our customers. That's a nice statement that we can kind of sit behind. So back to you, Jaap, to start the questions.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to ask Rupert and Kevin to shortly introduce themselves before I start asking the first question. So, Rupert, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Jaap, and thanks everyone for being on the call and for joining us today. Very excited to be here. So, a little bit about myself. I'm former investment banker and banker, raising capital across countries all over Europe and the US and a little bit in the Middle East. By chance, I fell into commercial real estate and was a lot around raising financing for real estate companies, again across Europe. I moved out of banking and became head of strategy for a UK company called Unite Students, which is the largest student housing provider in the UK, and now a member of the FTSE 100. And then moved back into banking for a little while, then to a FinTech called IPSX that was looking to, which was a stock exchange which was trying to list single commercial real estate assets. And had been at Pineapple for just over a year now. And Pineapple's purpose is to identify problems in decarbonisation and to build and work with our partners, Signify being one, and we're working with Edwards, to create scale decarbonisation solutions which will accelerate. And the key is we want to accelerate the journey towards net zero. Kev.
Thanks, Rupert. As Jaap said, I'm Kevin Jordan. I head up health, safety, environment quality and business process improvement over at Edwards Vacuum. Edwards are part of the Atlas Copco group, and I'm responsible for the Clevedon site in the southwest, where we manufacture, design and the R&D of something called an abatement system, which basically is sold into the semiconductor sector. And they remove all of the sort of noxious chemicals from the semiconductor processes and spit out clean air the other side. So I've been with the business about 10 years. In terms of my background, it's always been in and around the field of health, safety, environment and quality since the age of about 18. And the sort of reason I've got into this field is that we've got some very ambitious targets at Atlas Copco to achieve a 46% reduction from 2019 baseline to 2030 in our scope 1 and 2 carbon, and 28% in our scope 3. So I've been sort of prioritizing my time on the sustainability and environment side of my job, and that's why I'm here today to talk about what we've been doing.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Time for the first question, and I don't want to be impolite, but I have a first question for Clark. To start with. Clark, decarbonize buildings and enhancing workplaces. What does it really mean from your perspective and Signify's perspective?
Okay, good place to start, I guess. So for me in my role and for Signify, these are absolutely critical topics for both defining the direction of the business, but the lighting solutions that we develop and bring to the market to best serve our customers. And I think what we've all seen over the past 5 or so years is a bit of a shift from projects being focused more on the kind of the cost and maybe the energy elements to this more complex mixture of topics like sustainability, ESG, digitalization, decarbonization, even more emphasis now on some of the health and safety topics. Then we've got hybrid working and workplace improvement and people-centric design. So all of a sudden, the world's got a little bit more complicated. So as a result, we've had to reshape the business and what we bring to the market to make sure we can start to deliver on some of these topics, because it's no longer just simply about changing a few lights. We're also seeing fairly strong directives coming, around the energy performance building directives, where it's really driving the improvements and action around the built environment to bring the standards up. And I think as Signify, we believe that LED lighting and controls has got a key role to play. It's not going to solve everything, not going to solve all the problems, but it's certainly got a role to play. And more we're seeing projects and tenders and specifications where we're really starting to put the employee at the heart of that. And that's about encouraging people back to the office. We know there's been a little bit of hesitance after lockdown, but it's also about attracting new talent. And I think some of these trends are really driving the need for us to think a little bit more dynamically and a little bit more smart around the lighting that we bring into these workplaces. So I think for me personally, these topics are critical, but also as a business, if we don't address these topics, I think we'll struggle to differentiate. And as the leading lighting industry player, I think it's important that we continue to develop the right solutions to bring these to solve customer problems, as we're kind of discussing today. And Atlas will be a great example of how we're starting to deploy and implement some of these things.
Well, thank you, Clark. Just before I go to Rupert for my second question, with ESG, you mean environmental, social, and governance, right? Because they're good in abbreviations, but sometimes we miss that.
Yeah, and I know sometimes sustainability is kind of sort of fits within that, but it's almost like an umbrella now where ESG is above and sustainability sits below. But yeah, good to mention.
Thank you, Rupert. Coming back to what I said earlier about these complex topics of decarbonization, workplace improvements, net zero, etc. How do you see the role of partnerships and companies like Pineapple in being able to support and unlock this? What are Pineapple doing with regards to their model of engagement or end engagement? Is that something you can talk a little bit about?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we are called Pineapple Partnerships. So our whole ethos is around building partnerships that can enable, as I said earlier, the acceleration of decarbonization, the path to net zero and beyond. So we believe that no single entity or company is going to be able to achieve their targets on their own. Of course, if you're an asset owner that owns a hotel, as Clark was saying earlier, you've got to rely on experts, for various parts of your model anyway. Who's going to provide the cheese, who's going to provide the bedding, who's going to build the beds, who's going to supply the lifts. Decarbonization is just another element that asset owners and asset occupiers need to understand. So Pineapple is about building partnerships that can deliver those solutions that can enable an asset or a building to decarbonize in a quicker way. So where we look to build partnerships is where we have strong alignment of purpose and of outcome, a strong sense of collaboration, and an urgency to really move the dial and get people working faster. So hence we partner with Signify, we partner with a number of other companies where we actually are fully aligned. And if we have alignment as a solution provider with a company we're working with to help decarbonize, then we're all pushing in the same direction, and we're not going to come up against much tension. But that's on the sort of the solution side and the consulting side of how do we get there. A key element is the financing side. And what's great is over the last few years that some of the technology in finance, whether they are FinTech companies that can enable finance and analysis of financial structures or assets or credit positions to be done quicker, or whether they're actually evolutions of existing structures that can align to decarbonization, we as Pineapple combine those technical and solution providers with the financial, technical and solution providers, combine them together to deliver almost a one package of decarbonization to our clients. And the idea is that, again, if you pull back a bit to the partnership, each partner brings their own expertise. And what Pineapple do is combine all those expertise to deliver an optimal project plan deliver optimal pathways and roadmaps, and then with the aim that that's going to deliver the best outcome for the asset. And we're all working together in the same direction so we can keep it all moving forward.
Thanks for that, Rupert. So you live and breathe finance, right? So we have heard FinTech mentioned a couple of times now by you. Can you explain what you mean by this and why this is an important part of a partnership model?
Absolutely. I mean, FinTech has a number of different definitions. FinTechs, in the way where I exist in the banking world, are companies that are using technology, whether that is, an abacus from 2000 years ago, or, the latest in AI and large language models today, to enhance and speed up the ability to assess and, either create financial products, do credit assessments, building analysis, and things like that. So what we want to do is combine that level of analysis and that speed of analysis with the new structures, and structures can be born out of that speed of analysis. And that can then create bespoke financial products for individual clients, individual assets, portfolio level financing, right down to actual individual asset financing, down to a single solar panel. And so what we have today is actually a much more interesting market, where before it was like, well, you got to raise some equity, you get a loan from a bank, you might be big enough to sell a bond on the capital markets, and you might be mad enough to do hybrid financing or mezz financing. What we have today are structures whereby companies and financing companies can forward forecast energy savings or energy generation from particular products, and then can use that as an income stream and then finance those savings right up front. So say you're going to save, I don't know, let's just pick number, you've got a building, your energy costs are £10 million. I mean, it's a massive building if that is the case. If with all the interventions in, 5-7 years time, you'll be saving £5 million. Well, a financing company can come and give you that £5 million, or the savings over the time. So say it's on average £3 million a year. They can deliver that to you today so that you can start putting those implementations in. And over time, you pay back that loan, but you're also benefiting from the decarbonization. So you're emitting less carbon, you're using less carbon, you're using less energy. So actually your energy costs are going down. So you're getting a double win of your energy costs going down and having been able to do that up front. So what we're trying to do is leverage these different technologies, speed of analysis, ability to forecast correctly, and then to use those future cash flows to enable buildings, portfolios, and whole companies to front finance decarbonization, so they can actually get on with it and do it, rather than have to sit around waiting until all the savings have come through, which could take 1, 2, 5, 10 years, and are open to all kinds of global risks.
Amazing. Thank you for demystifying, at least for me, this FinTech world, because I'm totally new to that. But thank you for clarifying, Rupert. I'm not forgetting you, Kevin, but I have a question for Clark first. Clark, what role does the humble light bulb have to play in this approach and partnership model? What problems can it solve, and what benefits or value can it bring to clients?
Yeah, sure. And we say the light bulb more in jest. We don't say light bulb in the industry, but I think people understand that the simple light bulb, everybody can relate to lighting in some way. And I think when you look at all of the things that you could potentially implement within a building to support a decarbonization plan, lighting is recognized as one of, if not the most simple, tangible, quick and cost-effective solution to implement. And it's usually got good return on investments. We're not talking 5-10 years. We're looking at 2, 3, sometimes under 1 year to get that return on that asset investment. And when you compare that alongside some of the other bigger, more complex infrastructure type measures, I think it stands out as being, you know, one of the most interesting things to maybe start that journey. But it's also not the total puzzle, and I'll come back to that. It's just one key element. But as I touched on earlier, I think lighting is quite unique because it actually touches so many different topics and client challenges. And if we go back to some of the projects we were working on 5-10 years ago, it was very much about energy cost, replacing old technology with new technology, and that still has a place. You know, replacing an old light, maybe a fluorescent light, with an LED light can save you 60-70% in energy. You know, it's that tangible. And then you add on a little bit of controls on top, maybe you're saving 80%. So there's still huge benefit, and a lot of the business cases that we generate are still underpinned with the energy savings. So it's really important. Then you've got the cost savings. So as you reduce your energy bill, you're making the cost savings, which is clear. But then you've got the carbon savings, and that this is becoming more and more important. People are really now aware of their supply chain, their operational carbon, and making savings throughout the entire building is important. And I think lighting can play a nice part in that as well. And then we start to move into some of the more, I guess, less obvious benefits around good quality lighting and improving the health and safety of a workplace. You know, if you've got good lighting and you can see what you're doing, you'll probably reduce human error and improve product quality. If you've got lights that last longer, you're reducing the maintenance, and you're also probably eliminating working at heights. And lighting can be used to not just deliver on those things, but it can also just make a space feel safer. And I think these are all topics that can really contribute to the kind of the bigger health and well-being of the employees. And then finally, we've got this whole digitalization piece. You know, we hear about the Internet of Things, connectivity, digital buildings, and lighting can actually now be used within any building, whether that's an internal space or even an external space, to create what we call an intelligent backbone. Because lighting is everywhere, and you simply use that lighting infrastructure with the addition of some sensors, and all of a sudden you can start to collect data from that whole space or that whole building. And it's having that data that's becoming really powerful for customers, because they can then start to look at different value pools. It might be that they're looking at how the space is being utilized and optimized. It might be about asset tracking. It could be remote diagnostics and remote testing of the lights. And quite often what we see is these features end up becoming more valuable to the customer than the original energy or cost savings. So there's lots of different topics that lighting can support. It really comes down to a project by project discussion. But I do think it's one part of the puzzle. And as Rupert mentioned, there could be many different solutions that get integrated into the package along with the finance. And that's what we believe is really now critical in making sure we serve customers like Atlas Copco, Edwards, that we'll maybe hear a bit more about next.
Fantastic. Thank you, Clark. And it's good to see that we are already touching 2 out of the 4 key learning objectives of this session today, which is great. Kevin, over to you. Up till now, we have heard about the Pineapple Partnership model and how this FinTech model, including lighting, can really help clients like you with their decarbonization and net zero goals. And also the workplace improvement plans. So as a client here today, what are you specifically doing over at Atlas Copco in the Edwards Vacuum technical division to leverage and implement this approach?
So before any of these partnerships, like I say, we're quite a small site. We're 550 people. My responsibility, although I work closely with my global peers, my responsibility is mainly for the activities on this site. And between sort of my team, the environment, health and safety team, and the facilities team, we've always been very passionate about minimizing the impact of our activities on the both local and global environment. Now, before the partnerships on our own, we made a good start. The journey was quite unstructured. We were learning as we go. This wasn't our natural area of competence. We were doing our own research, making our own mistakes. And the approach was good. We've had some good feedback from some credible people, including yourselves, when you visited our site. But what I found is on our own, the learning was a lot slower. The implementation of solutions was a lot slower. Compatibility between the different solutions was sometimes problematic. And after you've invested in some infrastructural changes, the mistakes can be costly if they don't work. So one of our global internal stakeholders introduced myself and my team to Pineapple Partnerships, and then that web broadened to Signify and a number of other stakeholders and partners. And this has enabled us to learn about solutions much, much faster by using some of these best-in-class companies such as yourselves to show us the best way to implement these solutions, ensuring helps us with the implementation speeds. It's more aligned to our needs thanks to the comprehensive assessments and audits that have been done. And the integrated approach with all of the partners working together helps us create a holistic package that removes all of these compatibility issues, because between Pineapple and the various stakeholders, they're working together to support us to ensure that when we do implement a solution, it's something that does work. So the partnership has yielded, we're in the process of implementing a digital twin. So it's basically a simulation of our site's environmental and energy and infrastructural sort of usage of energy, lighting, gas, electricity, everything like that. And that is enabling us to, in advance of implementation, play with various configuration solutions and look what would work best for us, try things out in a model before we go out making some significant investments. We only pay then for what we need. When we do get it, it works seamlessly together. So in terms of the work that's been done with Pineapple and the various stakeholders, so there's lots of comprehensive assessments and audits of our energy usage, consumptions, of the whole facility. We've spent time reviewing gas bills, electricity bills, usage, data from digital twin, data from our building management system, enabling us to scope things out into a more appropriate configuration to get the biggest bang for our buck and not over-speccing stuff. But one of the benefits that have come from the partnerships is we touched on the financial. So fantastic financial options for us to potentially consider. So typically internally, the world I know and love, if we want to make an investment, we would apply to our global financial teams for a CapEx, and they would either approve or reject, and then we would track the return on investment. But Rupert and the team from Pineapple have introduced us to the concept that lots of large banks are actually looking to lend money to green decarbonisation projects, such as the various projects that we were looking at, very competitive rates. So it's given our sort of senior leadership team at the divisional level more options to consider and attractive finance mechanisms to think about. So we're still in the process of deciding which one would be best for us to go through. But it's certainly removed the blinkers from us and opened our eyes significantly as to what's available out there. And with Rupert's background and the expertise that he and Andy from the team have brought, you've got all of the data backed up to make a solid business case to decide which one you go for. And I think one of the biggest benefits for me, because I'm no expert in this, right, it's highlighted a number of blind spots that we hadn't even thought about. You can never think as an individual and all the different things that you could potentially get the benefit from. And one that Clark, when he was on site doing one of the assessments, so have you ever considered UV lighting in the air handling system? And my initial thought was, why would we do that? And then it came to light that this kills off all the sort of airborne pathogens. So it would reduce your sort of sickness figures. It allows you to reduce your airflow by 30%, reaping the carbon and financial benefits from doing so. So there's so many benefits that this has brought to an already fairly good program that we've been doing for our own research, but it's really, really accelerated that for us. So my vision for this is to scale something, get something that works from my site here in Clevedon, but then take something as a modular pilot site that we can then bottle those learnings, if you like, and scale the approach to all of the other sites across the sort of Atlas Copco organization to help accelerate their carbon reduction journey too. And with this approach, I'm highly confident that I mentioned some quite optimistic carbon targets earlier. I'm very confident that we can not only meet those, but significantly sort of overachieve on those. So it's yeah, it's a really sort of eye-opening concept to me, and yeah, it's yielding some good results so far. A long way still to go, but yeah, really good results so far.
Thank you, Kevin. You triggered something when you talked about digital twins. Last week, I was attending the Lucci Lighting Summit in London, and also there, digital twins were mentioned by the city of Stockholm, who is using a digital twin of the inner city to do proper lighting specification. But that triggered a question from my side, and the same question I'm going to ask you is, those digital twins, you use that for a specific purpose now. Is that easy to duplicate to other locations and projects?
I think so. I mean, we had Schneider Electric on site to help us look at the digital twin. And they were able to demonstrate that they have implemented digital twins on a whole host of different sites, whether it be from something that's in the middle of the outback to, I think it's a Lidl or Aldi supermarket in Finland or something like that. So they're able to configure and sort of custom build a digital twin. And a lot of the other sites will be looking to achieve the same things and the same kind of projects as us. I mean, there's about 5 or 6 key things that all the sites will be struggling with, which is gas consumption, energy consumption, pulling green energy, so that we're all trying to solve the same things from the discussions I've had with a lot of my peers across the world. And I think, so by the time we can get something here and scale it, it will be almost directly lift and drop to other sites across the group.
Amazing, thank you. Following on that, Kevin, can you tell a little bit more about your longer term plans and thoughts with regards to the rolling approach and model out across the group, both here, both in the UK,
yes,
and so further into Europe or the rest of the world?
Yes, so we have a quarterly review where all of the sort of presidents and vice presidents come and visit the site and review how we're doing. And our work here has attracted significant amounts of attention from our divisional presidents and vice presidents. And I'm coming under quite a lot of pressure to start sharing and learning this stuff already, to sort of, like I mentioned, bottle the learnings and share them. So we are already starting to see a lot of the benefits from the LED lighting we've put in place already. We've put partial solar panels on the roof already. I think our extension is already self-sufficient, so we don't pull any energy really from the grid for our extension. We're looking to scale that firstly across this site, but then once we can prove that concept, we're keen to be the sort of benchmark, the pilot site that we will then share all of these learnings across via our various sort of forums and committees across the rest of the UK, and certainly across the vacuum technique, which is the area within Atlas Copco I work in, via our global sustainability team. They are working and watching very closely as to how we are implementing them, and they will then take them, copy, paste, scale, and deploy, and by using us as the sort of the initial standard, to use the initial baseline. I think by standardizing the approach and evolving it as we roll it out, it'll ensure that there's a lot of consistency across the group, meaning that we can, when we come to assess our overarching science-based targets in terms of where are we, we'll try and standardize the way we measure that so we can give true, consistent metrics and accurately track that progress across our group. So yeah, I hope to be a global reference point for our other sites. But I would really keen to see as they learn and evolve the model that we started with, is for me to then take learnings that they've evolved back into this site, so that I can then learn from their evolution of what we've done and bring it back into this site. So we work very closely as a sort of SHEQ, so health, safety, environment, quality population across the division. And I'm quite keen to get this rolling and share some of the solutions with them. And I think we've already attracted a lot of attention in terms of the partnerships approach as well. So I believe Rupert, either this week or next week, is going across to our Global Technology Centre to talk with my equivalent there about how they can deploy some of the learnings that we've made with the support of the partnerships that we've got here.
Thank you. A question to the audience. In case you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat so that we can bring them to the panel if you have any. So don't be shy. You don't have to unmute yourself. It's just leaving a textual message and I will bring it into the panel discussion. Going back to you, Rupert. We've heard from Kevin on their plans for Atlas Copco. What do you see at the next critical steps for Pineapple in further developing and scaling up the model and taking it to other clients or markets?
Absolutely. And I think, our ambitions align specifically with Atlas's, but and also with Signify's as well. So as Kevin said, we're looking to use the Cleveland pilot as a way of building out to a portfolio-wide view of Atlas's assets in the UK and Ireland, which could be very excited. And then that can then, as we start to build up from sort of asset level view to portfolio view, then we can then build into looking at new and different financing structures. Whether that is sort of long-term insurance-backed or pension fund-backed sort of funds within Atlas, or whether actually going through individual asset by asset, given the way and the structure that Atlas run, might be more appropriate. But then at the same time, we are looking at a series of 100 leisure centres across the UK. And again, we have different ideas of what structures could be there. So one could be a portfolio-wide PPA, so a power purchase agreement, where the whole 100 sites sign up to one utility contract with a finance company that will provide all the solar to go on the roofs. Leisure centres have a reasonable amount of roof space, so actually it works quite well compared to sort of an inner city office block where you could probably get about 3 solar panels on top. So actually the energy generated off that can allow that financing company to front fund a load of these. Well, in fact, not even front fund, it's a zero capex option. So the energy company provides a contract generally lower than what the company is paying on their energy at the moment. They'll put on the solar panels for free, and over a 20-year period, the company will pay back. But what they will see, the asset owner will pay back, and what they will see is just costs below what the market rate is at the moment because they're generating their own electricity. So it's all positive in that sense. So that's the sort of the scale of what kind of contracts we can look at. But then within that, it's about, well, once we've done that and you're starting to save energy, how can we bring in the lighting? So Signify have been into a couple of these sites already to start looking at whole portfolio lighting solutions. And again, they come with different financing packages, whether it's just straight capex or whether it's sort of energy as a service, lighting as a service style structures, which is very good. We're working with UK banks and international banks about looking at their real estate portfolios. Part of our fundamental driver is that, this is a bank risk, buildings not being compliant, using too many fossil fuels, using up too much energy is going to create a valuation problem, which is going to create a financing problem for the banks. So what we're doing is working with the banks, the likes of Barclays and NatWest and HSBC, to find solutions not only to deliver to their big players, where you can deliver real scale solutions, but what our ultimate goal is to look at the tail of that bank lending book, the smaller portfolios, the smaller assets, and how can we deliver scale partners like Signify and like Schneider, who might not be able to serve individually those portfolios or assets, but if we can collectively bring them together under a financing umbrella provided by a large bank, then perhaps the expertise and the level of product scope and solution scope that a company like Signify can bring, that we can actually bring it down to assets that would otherwise not either have been seen, would either not believe that they were capable of doing that, or could afford to have those kind of solutions, and actually deliver real wholesale change across the built environment in the UK and beyond.
Oh, thank you. We are coming almost to a close. We have 15 minutes left. I have a question here. I think that's meant for you, Clark. What challenges were encountered during the implementation of connected lighting solutions, and how were they addressed?
Yeah, good question. And I guess ultimately, the minute you step into the connected world and the world of data and cloud and wireless, it ends up being more of an IT discussion than a lighting discussion. So not only are you having to find different people to engage with, instead of maybe the engineering or the energy manager or the facility manager, you're now having discussions with the IT manager, and it's a systems integrator topic, which is why we have a team of system integrators that understand the finer detail and the technicalities of how a connected lighting system would directly link into a building energy management system, for example. So that's where it really becomes more of a discussion, and it's not overly complicated. It's just we've got to have different discussions with different people about slightly different topics than maybe we did before the world of connectivity. But the uptake is increasing, and as you heard before, the extra value you can bring from having this connected piece massively outweighs the benefits that you would get just purely from the energy savings. So it's a really interesting area for us as a business.
Thanks, Clark. Yeah, I'm starting to get into the summary of this session. I see some other questions coming in, which I will tackle later on.
Okay.
But bringing the discussion and the session to a conclusion, maybe Clark, you can give a closing summary on what we have heard today and your key takeaways for our online audience.
Yeah, so I'll maybe just refer back to, I guess, the key learning objectives for this session. So it's difficult to cover all of the topics in one webinar, but what we really wanted to do was, I guess, highlight the role that lighting can play within a bigger decarbonisation plan or a strategy, and how that can really help deliver on plans around net zero, but as well as making general improvements to the overall workplace, but recognizing that it's only one piece of the puzzle. You know, we're looking here at a full integrated offer, of which lighting is one part. But I think we can see the kind of the value of that within the total offer is kind of critical for the customer. We talked about how partnerships are key, and we as a company truly believe that we can't do this alone. So this is an example of one partnership with Pineapple, working with customers like Atlas Copco, but we believe it's fundamental if we're going to really bring solutions at scale for our customers. We talked about FinTech, which may be a new thing for some people, but I think it's interesting how we can really combine the pure technical elements with the financial elements to give that full package, and in most cases avoid customers having to invest their own capex, which I think is sometimes a barrier. And then finally, and probably most importantly, we've heard from a real client. You know, quite often a lot of this stuff stays on PowerPoint or stays in theory. You know, lots of audits have been done and this is what you could do. We're actually implementing with Atlas Copco, and I think it's a really great example of a company that's really taken these challenges seriously. And I'm sure there are plenty of other clients out there that would benefit from such a partnership, such a model, and would appreciate, you know, that full integrated offer being brought to them to help them. So yeah, hopefully that's kind of captured all of the the main learning points for today.
Spot on. Thank you, Clark. I have a question, and I think all of you can answer that. If you feel uncomfortable, you can pass this one, but I'm gonna read it out because it's a long one.
Okay.
But let me give it a shot. So, in the context of a broader sustainability conversation, how do you address the increasing energy consumption of AI models when discussing the use of AI or digital twins to enhance, track, and evolve our understanding of best sustainable practices? The person who is asking is coming from a technical background and is telling that he can see how powerful and useful these tools can be, but with more and more information coming about how wasteful these models can be, he's just looking for advice on how you think about that. So who wants to take this one?
I can have a first go because I had some very similar discussions around the topic of data centers, and I think AI, data, digital twins is probably some of the themes that are really driving the uptake in data centers. And the question was, how do you make a data center sustainable when what it's doing is it's just, it's ultimately downstream creating possibly a bigger problem. And I think what we've done is we've been very careful in who we've selected to work. Well, I say we, the Pineapple Partnership, who we've selected to work. So it's no coincidence that Signify and Schneider are both recognized as the most sustainable technology companies in the industry. So we've got comfort already in that piece of the supply chain that we are doing everything we can to bring sustainable solutions into the partnership. And then ultimately for a customer like Atlas Copco, they will do a full assessment of the total carbon impact of every measure that they implement and design and implement within the project. So I think as long as we're very careful in the way that we select and track and then report, we can be confident that we're doing as much as we can. But all this stuff is still a little bit unknown. Digital twins are still fairly new to a lot of customers and a lot of industries. So we probably don't have all the answers, but that's how we've kind of dealt with it within this particular partnership.
And I mean, from my side, you look at how comfortable people are with using AI. From the energy use of the DeepSeek AI profile is something like a fifth or a tenth of that of ChatGPT or Gemini or things like that. So the technology in AI will improve over time. So the use of energy will drop as people don't look for whole AI models, and you can actually fragment and compartmentalize what you're searching for, which reduces the energy massively. But also you can use that heat energy. So the leisure center company we're working with, what they've worked, one of the biggest costs in a leisure center is heating up a swimming pool. Now, how do you heat? That is a huge cost for them. But what you can do is use the heat from a nearby data center or build a data center next to a leisure center, so you can recycle the water through the data center, extract the heat from the data center, and then use that to heat up the swimming pool in the leisure center. So the innovations, they will continue. And I get the worry about AI. I think it is sort of a contradiction in terms that, we're solving all these problems, but it's creating its own problem. But there are ways that exist today that can use that energy that's given out to service other parts of the economy and nearby buildings. And it's about having smart, clever planning, or just thought through planning. If we're going to put data centers down, there's a risk of cyber attacks and stuff like that, or actual physical attacks, but also can we put them down in areas that actually need a huge amount of heat, and actually taking it and waste energy away and using it for recycling it for other purposes.
That's interesting, especially about the reuse of that heat coming out of those data centers. I heard about a fantastic example also coming back from London, how the Bloomberg building in the city is being designed in such a way that the first two floors, when illuminated, are also immediately directly illuminating the streets, so you don't need any street lighting anymore. You're reusing what's coming out of the offices as light spill to illuminate the street. It's also a good example of how to, let me see. Here is a question. Which world region is more involved in decarbonizing buildings? Can you say something about that?
I can give a view from what I see within Signify and the clients that we are talking to. So I guess the uptake is maybe a little bit slower than we would like. I think Europe generally have got some strong directives and standards that are being implemented. For example, in France now, there are very clear mandates that every building must have some smart controls. Now, it might, again, not solve the whole puzzle, but it's a good indication that these topics are becoming more and more important. The energy performance building directives, whilst I don't think they've formally landed and been mandated in the UK, we know they're coming, and whether it's in 3, 4, 5 years' time, again, that will be a strong trigger. So I think probably Europe as a whole is probably slightly ahead of either the Far East or America. But I think at some point in the next few years, there's going to be a real conflict point where you're not going to have a choice. You're going to have to make these decisions. You're going to have to decarbonize, or you could be left with a building that's effectively a stranded asset that cannot be leased or will not be mortgageable. I think that's the reality at some point. We're just not sure when.
Thank you, Clark. A remark from one of the attendees that is suggesting to organize some separate sessions for a more in-depth discussion, which can be one of our upcoming podcast episodes. So I keep that in mind. So I write that down. Another one, and I think that should be the last one for today. How can the lessons learned listening to you today be applied to other sectors aiming for decarbonization? And maybe Rupert, you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, no sector is immune from it, and each has their own challenges. You know, Kevin's building down in Clevedon, you know, it's got a large amount of roof space, which is great because, you know, a large amount of solar can be put on there. Energy can be generated. You either use that to finance all the rest of the interventions, or you can use it for your own purposes or sell it back to the grid. There are lots of options there. That solution is not really applicable to, say, an office in the middle of the city that, you know, will have restrictions on what you can put on the roofs, or just won't have much, you know, you've got a 20-story building. The ratio of roof space to energy usage versus Kevin's, you know, I guess sort of 6-7-story building that is got quite a wide spread is going to be a lot less applicable. So for each building, and these very, I mean, it's lovely in the world that pretty much all buildings are quite different. What is frustrating from a decarbonisation perspective is that all buildings are quite different. So every single building is needs its own bespoke solution. You know, we can't cookie cutter the solution that we've done for Kevin onto even one other asset within the Edwards portfolio. So each building will require a different solution. And I think, but what you can learn from each one is what are the bits that have the biggest impact that can be applicable across. So, you know, things like air filtration that, you know, the guys in Clevedon haven't really come across before, you know, those killing of all those pathogens, reducing the amount of sick days, increasing the productivity of the employees. For any building that has air handling units and air conditioning systems, that's completely applicable, which is fantastic. Lighting, I think, as we said right from the outset, it's the way to get your foot in the door. Everybody can understand it. Everyone can see it being changed, and everyone can see the results almost immediately, which is fantastic. So there are those basic things, but then if you're looking at heat pumps, they might not be applicable to everyone. Solar might not be applicable. You know, all sorts of other interventions. You know, you've got to pick and choose, and that's why we work with the likes of Signify, the likes of Schneider, you know, and other partners around to make sure that we're not just walking in and going, yes, put a solar on the roof. It's absolutely fantastic. It saves loads of money. And actually, it's a completely inappropriate intervention for that building. So, you know, it's all about veracity. It's all about honesty and openness. And when we begin our journey with our clients, we do this first phase called Imagine, which we did with Kev and his colleagues back in November. What do you want to achieve? How do you envisage achieving it at the moment? And let us help you. Let us give you solutions on how we can get there. And once we understand, and if, you know, people we work with are transparent about what they want to achieve, we can then build up a bespoke plan to get to that point.
But just to add to that, Rupert, I think the model and the approach that we've got is relevant to all subsegments. That if we talk about healthcare and hospitals, and we talk about factories, and we talk about universities, it's the same approach. Might be a slightly different mix of solutions, but they can all be supported and delivered through a partnership like this, because we've got that flexibility to pick and choose what's relevant for that site, for that segment. So again, whether it's a warehouse, a hospital, whether it's at a city level, the same principles and the same approach applies.
All right, so thank you so much.
Thank you.